Hey guys, and welcome to our essay 1. As you guys can see, we are on step 1 of our essay, step 2 as well, and then step 3, the outline's due tomorrow, step 4 is the rough draft, and step 5, the final draft, will be due on Friday. So let's talk about what this looks like. You go into your 10th grade unit 4, All That Glitters, semester B. Scroll down until you get to the black folder called Informative Essay, Essay 1. We click Essay 1, and you guys can see all the steps right here in front of you. We start with step 1, read overview and directions. So this is an informative essay, not exactly, but very similar to the example text that we covered in our class at the beginning of this quarter. So if you open your English 10 text and scroll to the very first essay we read, it's called I Came, I Saw, I Shocked. It's on page 366, or our PDF page 5. You guys can see that this is an informative text, and if you recall from our first day, we talked about example, statistics, and expert opinion, and how the writer uses all of those as they write. And so where we are in our class is using that as a guide or an inspiration to write our own informative essay. Yours, on the other hand, will use 2 of the 3 texts that we read. So we had the story, The Necklace, where, if you recall, Madame Loisel thinks that she has to be rich and look pretty and fancy all the time. She borrows a necklace, she loses the necklace, and then works for 10 years to pay off the debt of returning the necklace. The diamond necklace she bought to replace it, and turns out it was a fake diamond necklace. Then we have Civil Peace, where Jonathan Iwobu loses a small fortune. He got 20 pounds, which is British money, right? So like 20 bucks he had, and then that 20 bucks was stolen from him that night. But his feelings towards what is valuable is different than Madame Loisel. And then you have the photo essay, Fit for a King, Treasures for Tutankhamun. And this is a photo essay about King Tut's treasures that were buried along with his body to prepare him for the afterlife. And so your job then, using these 3 texts, is to use your knowledge of the topic to write an informative essay about how people assign the value. And this is key because the focus is how we choose to decide that certain things are valuable. So the assignment is to think about how characters or real-life people featured in this section decide what is valuable to them. Consider different reasons that objects either have or lack value. Then write an essay that answers these questions. The questions then that guide your essay and guide your thesis is what makes something valuable and what makes something a treasure. What makes something valuable and what makes something a treasure? You take these questions and roll with it. So you get to decide where you're going to go with this essay, or if you're going to say that some people are foolish or silly for thinking things were valuable when they shouldn't have, or if you think that certain materials are more valuable than other materials. You're welcome to use all 3 of these texts if you want. You're only required to use at least 2 and to have some other piece of evidence. So if you want to use 2 texts and then do some research on your own about what psychologists are saying about materialism, or to find some more quotes about someone else who has assigned value to materials that goes along with whatever you're saying from these texts, you're welcome to use research as your 3rd piece of textual evidence. So you need to use at least 2 of these stories, and you need 3 pieces of textual evidence. So you also are going to need to use the effective informative essay information, like a clear thesis statement. That's our first assignment. Facts and details from reliable, credible sources. Remember that when you're doing research. This has to be a reliable and credible source. You might actually have to research the author and see how reliable they are, or spend some time telling the reader why they are reliable. We talked about that at the beginning of the course when we said that perhaps a Kardashian might have something reliable and credible to say about materials because they have so many. they also, for the most part, for other research, wouldn't be credible, reliable sources. So keep those in mind. You also want a well-organized structure. You'll need an intro, a body, and a conclusion. And if you recall the text, let me back up here. To our first text that we read. If you go back here, you remember that they have a really great intro, getting the reader involved and interested, talking about materials and things that we owned and maybe have forgotten about. And that's how they get into their thesis. And then they conclude really clearly, we talked about this in class, that their first sentence is a great restatement of the thesis. That all information we have about shopping and spending suggests the desire for a particular item is not so simple. And that was their thesis, that we all want stuff, but what's the motivation? And then they do a really good job of summarizing why they said what they said. That our brains are one of the motivators, our social connections is another motivator, and then our feelings. Those three things are what they use in each of these sections to explain why we buy what we buy. So, super cool example here if you want to swing back to, again, that's page 5 on our PDF or 366 in the text. So that does a really great job of including intro, a body, and a conclusion. The body, of course, is where all their sources are, where all their textual evidence was. And if you guys recall, their textual evidence was great. They had so much. They referred to a study, they referred to a research component, specific research done. They talked about social relationships from the millennial generation. And they gave many very specific examples, like the doll from May 2006, sold for this exact amount of money. Obviously, they did some research on that. So you guys can see that they have multiple elements of textual evidence as well. Then you'll need to use appropriate and varied transitions that clarify relationships among complex ideas. So keep in mind how you shift from sentence to sentence, from paragraph to paragraph, making sure that it's clear when you are connecting ideas or comparing ideas or contrasting ideas. You'll need correct grammar and usage. That's something you can work on once you've written your rough draft as well, because we will have a day where the rough draft is turned in and a day to edit it. And lastly, you need a formal style and objective tone. Now, if you recall, this text didn't have a super formal style. They say, perhaps you know what became of the robotic dog. Maybe you remember. So it appeals to the audience, calling you. There are other times when they say, when you want something with a passion, or when they mention we. So you guys are welcome to go from that perspective, but you still have to be objective and unbiased. So you need to be intentional about making sure that you're not just sharing your opinions. You're not saying I believe, I think, I da-da-da. That's not appropriate for this kind of essay. So keep it formal and objective in that you are clearly stating facts and making things clear, not necessarily giving your own opinion. Alright, so that's what this all says. Right here, for a model of a well-crafted informative essay, see that lunch text, and that's the one we've been talking about right here. And then let's move on to step 2. So step 1 was just learning and reading and understanding the goal for this essay. The next thing you need to know is coming up with a working thesis. So that's step 2. Step 2, you're writing a thesis, and that you need to think about all 3 texts and choose the 2 that you're going to write your essay about, and then write a rough thesis. And this is the main point that you're going to make. Thinking about which text you will use first is going to help you decide what you want to say. You're also going to answer questions 1 through 4 on your own to help you to come up with a thesis. So let's look at those questions. Question 1. Take 1 to 2 minutes and brainstorm a list of the things you find valuable. These can be materialistic things you own or things money can't buy. So here's an example. All the things that I think are valuable and some subcategories as well. And some of these are things that you can buy and some that you can't. You can't buy family, you can't necessarily buy neighborhood. Neighbors are the feeling of safety. You can buy a house there, but you can't buy those feelings. Questions 2 and 3 then are choosing 2 of the 3 texts that you want to use in the essay. Again, you can use 3 texts. You need 3 pieces of textual evidence. So if you are only choosing 2 texts, you'll also have to do some research. So remember, here's the 3 texts that you can choose from: necklace, civil peace, or fit from a king. Here's your example. I will use civil peace to discuss how true value is for those things that can't be bought, which is in the final paragraph. And I will use fit for a king to discuss how King Tut took all these things to the grave, but they're still there. He didn't get to keep them because they didn't go to the afterlife with him. They're still here. So these 2, questions 1, 2, and 3, help you to plan where you think you're going with this so that you can come up with a working thesis, which is what you're actually going to post in the comments below. So question 4 then, you write a working thesis. So here are some options. 1, need is determined in many ways in text 1 and text 2 and text 4. Need versus want is determined differently. So this one talks about need versus want. Another one is an imbalance in want and need can cause many problems. I can see where that's going in story 1 and story 2. Another possibility is value is assigned to different things in text 1 and text 2, but in both texts what is valuable is determined by the main character's own values. That one, of course, would have to use some research because they're only using 2 texts. This one's only using 2 texts, would need to add some research for textual evidence. In this one, they're using 3 texts, and they would have enough textual evidence if they use 1 from each of those. So, lastly, you only post your answer to question 4. Here's an example thesis. People assign value to objects when they should realize those things they cannot buy is what is truly valuable. So that is something that you would post. So that's my example posting. And remember, this is something that is workable and changeable, but this is what was due today, Monday. Step 3 is the outline. As it says, you need an intro, a body, and a conclusion. So we are going to use the outline worksheet link and the example of outline worksheet to plan the full essay. So the outline worksheet is a copy. You open the copy and fill in the blanks. So you have set up here that you can use text 1, text 2, and research. You're also welcome to add body paragraph 4, which is research, but it's optional. So if you want to add more research, kind of like how this, I came, I saw, I shopped, used so many different pieces of research, that might be a direction you want to go. So back to the copy. So your job is to fill in each section here to prepare for your essay. The more intentional you are about writing full paragraphs and having really great quotes, aka textual evidence, from your texts, the less effort it will be to go from outline to rough draft. If you want to just write it like bullet point ideas, you still get full credit for the outline, but you're going to have to do more when you get to the rough draft. So the intro looks for your response to the prompt, those 2 questions, asks you to give background and then have a thesis. Then each of these body paragraphs asks for a topic sentence that includes title and author of whatever evidence you're giving, a evidence to support, and this will be where your textual evidence goes, and then some sort of conclusion sentence that ties up the text and your point. And then each one of those body paragraphs includes those same 4 things: topic, sentence, detail, evidence to support, transition, topic, detail, evidence to support, transition, and the optional 4th body, and the conclusion. This is where you restate your thesis, you say your main idea again, you sum up your main point, you do a statement of value. That's step 3, the outline. Then you write your rough draft. First thing you have to do is share with me in Google Docs, then submit it, and Friday the final is due. And that you'll edit on Friday and then submit. And that's it. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Hopefully this video is helpful for you to know what to do next. Thanks for listening.